This is the Cardinal Cowboy Show.
Giddy up! Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, we are live in the Cardinal Cowboy studios here. Now, you know, I've been running around for a while.
Yeah?
And I get to meet some cool people.
Who?
Well, I mean, all right, can I be honest with everybody?
Yeah.
When I was a kid.
Ozzy. I know you got Ozzy's picture up over
yeah,
here.
there's Ozzy.
Ozzy.
We always make our joke. Ozzy got his picture with the Cardinal Cowboy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lucky for him, right? But Ozzy was a childhood icon of, like my what do you call that? John, what do you call that? When
your hero.
My hero.
Ozzy, baseball. Lou Brock. I mean, there's another
Lou
good
sadly, one. Yeah, recently.
Yeah. Ozzy and I used to play golf together, and he and I
really?
took on a couple of guys one time. We were getting ready to tee off, and some other guys said, "Well, come on, we want to play with you guys?" I said, "Okay." They want to place for something like $50 a hole. And I said, "Ozzy, I don't play that rich because people get upset. I just don't want to do that." Ozzy was about a 3 handicap, maybe a 5.
Yeah,
at
he's
the
not
time.
too far from the tour.
Yeah, he's maybe 5 at that time, and I was 12, so maybe closer to 14 at that point. These guys claimed they were both 4s or 6s, and so we settled on, let's just do $5 a hole with presses. They could be very thankful that they got lowered. If they were anywhere near the bet, the value, a handicap they said they had, they would have lost a ton of money. We got to the last hole. Ozzy's got about a 8-foot putt, and he lines it up, and I know what's going on as soon as he takes a swipe at it. He goes right in, he turns, looks at me, he said, "Larry, you know what today is?" I said, "I do, Ozzy." He said, "It's payday."
It's payday. So, ladies and gentlemen, in studio, we have Larry Connors, the legend. So, Ozzy was an idol of mine as a child. Now I recall.
Understandable.
Thanks for leaving me a minute to think about it. And on TV, I obviously had a little bit of an urge to be a personality. And so Larry Connors was.
I'm honored.
I remember watching you for many years. I glanced at your history at 50 years in broadcasting at one level or another.
Yeah, and I'm only 35. Hell of a career,
you
huh?
started that off very young. And so you started when you were 52, I guess, right?
In St. Louis, you say?
When you were 2 years old. So
yeah, pretty close to that. Yeah. Actually, I started earlier.
I messed up my own joke there. I'm a bit funny. But I said, you started when he was 2 years old. Does that make sense? So you get down to when you see, it's like a daily occurrence. There's Larry Connors going to give us the news, going to tell us what's going on.
Well, we've been running at each other a lot. You make a lot of events. I know you help with charities. You're out with things, and you're always encouraging people to give and have a gracious heart, which you do, and they're always glad to see you.
Well, I appreciate that. So you do know a little bit about the background.
Sure.
You don't know you haven't heard all the bad stuff. So we'll
no, I do.
Oh,
I do. You think I'm not an investigative reporter? I know. What
some of it's true. Some of it's true. But I happen to be, my mom called me today, and she says, "I need you to come down and set up this printer." I'm like, okay, it's not that complicated, but I used to build servers for Anheuser-Busch, an email guy. And I said, I'll come down and do that. And then you happened to call me back to talk about, pregame prep for the show.
Right.
And I said, "Mom, guess who I got on the phone right now?" She's like, "Larry Connors."
Wow. It was a pleasure to speak to her. It really was.
And so I appreciate you talking to her. But John, at a certain point of the call, I said, "Thanks, John." Because I was thinking about, I was going to mention to you. And you know what my mom's famous for? She taught John Goodman drama here. So did you know that before I told you?
Yeah, I did.
You knew that.
Sure.
Wow. See, so it's a small world, and not that that's a major accomplishment, but it's kind of just to have your impact.
No, it is.
How many people do you feel you've had an impact on? And do you recognize something like that? I mean, people come up to me by now and they say, "You visited my kid at the hospital," and if you
it's I think that stuff you do is really meaningful. And when you say have an impact on people, I mean, people feel like they know you and they've had watched, and I'll have folks come up and say, "I've been watching since I was this high." I said, "Don't start that with me." So, but the real impact, honestly, if I'm looking for a true impact, I used to do a lot of speaking engagements at churches and so forth, and I'm very honest and I should say forthright about my Christian walk, although I don't do it as well as I should. I'm such a sinner in so many ways, but if I had any impact, that's what I would hope the impact would be.
Well, and that's why I say, I mean, when you've been on the news every day for somebody that and the news has evolved, to say the least, and you've been somebody who's been in the middle of some of that. And all the changes and the whole the interwebs and how you can get caught up with that in particular. I don't even want to bring that up to talk about. I know you.
It's changed dramatically. I mean, I remember distinctly when I first got in, and you'd see the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite, and they'd be doing a report, Morley Safer or Mike Wallace, in Vietnam, and I'm thinking there'll be a day that they can take that live from the field, and now they do,
Yeah.
So, but I was thinking ahead of what I thought would come, but I didn't know how fast. The reason I came to St. Louis actually is because I had an offer to go here or to KNBC in LA. I'd already passed on an opportunity to be an ABC correspondent. My wife had just gotten pregnant with our first child, and I knew I'd be on the road all the time, and I did not want to do that. If I'd had that opportunity prior to then, I would have. So then this one came along, and at the time, Channel 4 was owned by CBS, and it was the only station in the nation that had gone total electronic gear at that point. They threw out the projectors. They had their trucks running around, and photographers would go do the story, reporters that go to the truck at a feed point and then feed it in rather than drive it in. So they were learning to do that. It was on the cutting edge. I thought I want to be here for that. It was a good idea. Herb Humphreys was here. You remember Herb?
I remember Herb. Yeah.
All right, Herb and I both, we're both Texans. We're both old radio guys, and I've got a degree in BS, so I cannot be stumped by anything that happens. So
I have a BS in
yeah, no, that's what I got. That's what I mean.
Bachelor of Science.
Yeah,
for those
yeah. Well, mine is, but you call it the other one as well too. So
it ties into the other stuff.
we could handle live shots easily because we're used to just shooting off the cuff. A lot of the reporters were not that good at it, but the real key came in as we began to see advances with the equipment. We had two-man crews, one guy carrying the camera, one carrying the recorder and the sound, and pretty soon all the brand new equipment came out, so forth. They sent it to the other CBS stations, not here. So, but it was a good opportunity, and I enjoyed it.
Well, tell us. Before we're hustling here.
Yep.
Are you still on 590?
Oh no, that's
Okay,
why I
so-
sent you that other info.
Okay,
Yep.
so let me pull that up for you real quick.
Yeah.
And the truth is,
But I started when Channel 4 fired me, and I was under restrictions for 1 year. I couldn't work at all in the business.
right.
And then when they said I
Non-compete.
could, that took a few months to put together. And I will thank the Dorseys over at Mark Dorsey over at KTRS for opening up a slot for me. He knew I wanted a daytime slot, and I wanted to do more political. I was at a point now, I'd spent all these years being basically unbiased for the audience, because that's the way it should be as a news anchor, and I wanted a chance to speak my mind. So we did that for about 2.5, 3 years, and then I followed Frank Opinion over to KFNS. We were there for a while, and then they moved me to a later slot, and I didn't like it, so now I'm over at KXEN, 1010 a.m., 11 a.m. to 1. Although in November we're going to change because Charlie Kirk at Turning Point is coming out with the syndication.
really,
And we're going to do we'll be live that morning with Mike Gallagher, I think, of Salem Broadcasting. Then Charlie Kirk will take my slot 11 to 1. Then I'm on live 1 to 3. And then Ben Shapiro will follow me 3 to 5. And I'm not sure. I don't recall who comes up next. So.
well, and I've got some of your information here about your current shows
Yeah.
and the excitement. You're still keeping active, man. You're keeping a lot of cool stuff going.
I love what I do.
you're
I
doing-
mean, you know how it is. If you love what you do, you're never working. I mean, and this works out great. I put a lot of time in. I'll go in at 3 hours before I go on the air and start pulling material.
well, so yeah, I mean, ultimately, just to be involved with this kind of a medium and the way it's evolved. I mean, literally, now this whole internet web thing is just taking
yeah,
over. I mean,
yeah.
is it possible to avert this whole and still? I mean, by now, and when you were in it, obviously that was a big impact with the social media thing has kicked in, and you start to report through your social media. I know a lot of guys they're reporting more on their they're news people reporting more on social media, and then they have their 30 minutes. They're in.
That was a problem too.
2 minutes. They're in. 30
That was a
minutes.
problem too when I was at Channel 4, because once this started taking off, we would have a major story break. Well, I could not get a camera crew to get in the studio, get me online faster than what they could get on the internet with it. So we were cannibalizing our own product. So by the time we got on the air, we've already had it on our internet, which is good if it cross-plugged it. But yeah, that's part of the business in the sense that you've got to accept the changes. If you can't accept it, then you might as well get out. I've been very blessed. Yeah, that's the current site that you just had up there.
And I had it. There we go. So,
Oh, yeah,
look
yeah.
at our TV wall
Yeah.
behind us.
Now we're getting ready to change the title.
Okay.
The station has been primarily religious for many years, and the owner is now, we're reworking the app and the online thing to make it more talk radio of political content. Faith Talk STL could still apply to politics, but it doesn't say what we want to, so we're reworking that.
Well, okay, so.
Oh, yeah, that's a tight shot of me
let's
up on
share-
the arch.
Well, we got the mobile version up on,
Yeah,
on our
yeah.
big screen, so that's the.
Yeah,
link there.
that's my site.
So, if John, if you would take a wide shot of us real quick and share everybody. So you can see up here is the KXEN 10
AM, right.
AM and 104.5 FM. So how often can people hear you on that?
Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1
And that's what he got.
until November 3rd or 2nd, whatever that Monday is. And then I'll go on 1 to 3, and Charlie Kirk will take my spot.
And that's pretty
It's
exciting.
going to be a great program. I mean, of course, everything is pushing to that November date election anyway. In fact, I'll go on the Monday before the election. So I really didn't want to make the change in, but that was going to work best. And so, and what you have there is Larry Connors USA Facebook. That's where folks can go to get more details about the program. Everything goes up as a podcast after we air it. Each program is put up. I have a lot of first responders that listen, but they can't listen while they're on duty, so they pull up the podcast later on.
Okay. And do you want me to put your LarryConnorsUSA.com up?
Yeah, that takes, when you go to LarryConnorsUSA.com, that's actually where you will also find the podcast as
that's where I was
well.
listening
We
to
promote
the podcast.
primarily USA
Yeah.
Facebook because that's what so many folks are into. And once you open that, then it takes you to .com for the podcast. So, and today I had John Malcolm of the Heritage Foundation on talking about the beginning of the hearings for Judge Barrett. And also then I had Dr. Gerard Lamero, who does political forecasting and models. Dr. Lamero, in January of 2016, after Trump had come down and announced he was actually going to go ahead and run, within a month, Dr. Lamero predicted, based on his computer modeling, that Trump was going to win. I had a hard time believing that at that point. We had, remember, 16, 17 candidates, and Trump was not my first, second, or even third choice for who was out there. But it kept winnowing the field, and finally it became him against Hillary, and in my opinion, there was no choice then. It had to be Trump. A lot of folks say, well, how can you do that being a Christian? He's, what he's done. We say about women, I said, we're all sinners, but I'm not electing a pastor. I'm trying to elect someone who's going to preserve our democracy
Yeah.
and make our country better. And I think he will. And I certainly didn't like what she had done with her past, not reference escapades like he had, but just what I thought would happen. And sure enough, so it was the right thing. And Dr. Lamero was right. It's a good 9 months before the election, he called it. And he says right now that Trump has, by his forecast model, has more than 300, maybe 320 or 30 electoral votes. You need 270. And there are two other guys that come close to that same number that predict the same thing he does. Mainstream media, CNN did the other day, said for the first time Biden has crossed the 270 mark, like he's got the Electoral College locked down. I asked Dr. Lamero about that today. He said, well, they're wrong. Just simple, they're wrong.
Well, and is that a matter? Okay, let's talk a little politics because
Sure.
I get into that a fair amount. If you listen to my show a little bit, we bring on. We had Peggy Hubbard on last week.
I heard the one, Peg, I think, yeah.
And we've had Greg Upchurch. He ran for lieutenant governor as a
Right,
Democrat.
right.
And so we try to get all sides. But I'm one with you. I don't profess a particular ideology or a party that I particularly affiliate with. It's just that after coming through a coma, and effectively they were trying to make me into a victim. I'm
Right.
very sensitive to the whole
Sure.
victim mentality.
Sure.
And I just feel like there's one group of people that kind of, that's what they promote.
Right.
And there's another
Right.
group where they say, hey, I'm not going to do much for you. You're going
Right.
to have to work your butt off.
Right.
But the last thing I'm going to try to make you is a victim.
Right.
And that's where I think the weakness in our country really
I
comes
agree
from.
fully. And I mean, and that's why you get black Americans like Candace Owens, Dr. Ben Carson, Thomas Sowell, people like that are, they're saying, just because we're black, we're not a victim. Don't call us that. And that's why so many black Republicans are emerging. In fact, Trump pulled 8% of the black vote last time. And remember, he said, what do you got to lose? Give me a chance. What do you got to lose?
How's it
8%
going
of them.
since
And Dr. Lamero and some of them are now predicting, I have a hard time believing this, but they're predicting 30% plus. If that happens, it changes the landscape dramatically.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, anytime you try to step off, and I've said this on the air, you step off the reservation or the plantation they put you on,
That's what,
they're going to come after you.
that's
They're
what
going to
Peggy said.
attack
She got
you.
off the
That's
Democratic
exactly right.
plantation,
And
yeah.
so they're calling them Uncle Toms and slandering them that they don't have intelligence. There's a group, I didn't get a chance to put it on the air today because of the hearings. There's a group of black women in Detroit that are all for Trump, and they have been absolutely slandered because they're standing up. They're entitled to their opinion. No one says they have to have herd mentality. I mean, why is it their ideal is acceptable because they're saying it, and you're not allowed to have an ideal unless you follow their plan?
Well, that's where ultimately I'm fortunate to have two parents who both are involved with education.
Yes.
And I've been many discussions with my mother who's like, I talk to her, I speak when somebody says, who's your mentor that you're referring to? I've been very fortunate to have a mother who's built a multi-million-dollar organization.
That's
also
a hero.
Run a high school drama program for 50-plus years. Got the building named after her, and John Goodman flew in to do that for her.
Well, see, that's where the mentor should be and where your hero should be. Should start with the parents, and that's another key because I'm drawing a blank now on one of the prime football players he's talking about the other day, retired NFL Hall of Famer, black player. He said we have the problems in our community because we don't have parents at home, and in some cases they can't because it's a single family, single parent, and they're trying to support their kids while taking care of them. But in some cases it's just been abandoning and neglecting kids, and if you do that, kids are going to find their own level, and that's not good sometimes.
Well, that's where we get into the real depth of, and again, I don't try to particularly persuade any party by name publicly. Other people that know me personally pretty much know where I stand.
I think we all, yeah.
But it becomes fairly obvious.
But it doesn't. But you're right. It doesn't have to be political stripe. There are good Christian people that are Democrats, and there are good Christian people that are Republicans that don't like Trump. So I mean, it's not a matter, and I don't mean just Christian. I mean Jewish, religion, whatever the religion is. You have a base moral compass that is the way we should be, and you don't have to be one political stripe or the other. That's just a difference of opinion. I ran a quote the other day for JFK, and I said, let's don't do the Republican thing, let's don't do the Democrat thing, let's do the right thing. That was JFK. And
that's where I got cornered in a situation where something came about, and I started to give my perspective on it. And it was actually, somebody took a picture with me, and ended up being on the Riverfront Times.
Right.
And somebody had a Trump poster standing next to me.
Right.
And then they tried to make an issue. Then somebody took some very dramatic text that started with an F and rhymed with the word truck, and put that across the internet. I got calls from people saying, dude, have you seen what's being put out there? And I'm like, all I was doing was going to an event.
Right.
And I would go to any event. If the opposing party would have had the event, I would have appeared there.
Right.
I'm all about just being in front of people and trying to help spread the word.
There is a problem with the professional leagues. And the other day, Adam Silver, the NBA, acknowledged that next year on the NBA courts, they will not be putting social justice messages, nor the players wearing them. And LeBron James and the main players are not saying anything to contradict him. And I was having that conversation with someone the other day. We got the message of what you're trying to say, but quit shoving it in everybody's face. They want to watch sports. They go to sports to get away from all this. They don't keep putting, and in particular, BLM in front of them. And BLM is not what a lot of people think it is, Black Lives Matter. It has an idea that, but all lives matter. And what really gets me about BLM, if you really believe that, then when I see a young child shot down in the minority neighborhood by gangsters, where is BLM out there protesting that child's death, that black child's death, a victim of crime? Where are they when I had a story on the other day about so we had another police officer involved shooting, a black man was killed. Where was Black Lives Matter? Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. The police officer was the black person that was killed. So you don't go out there and support him and his family. And they millions of dollars they're collecting, they could be putting back into the community, into black businesses. Not a dollar's going to them. It's going to political candidates, socialist agendas. And if you really care about Black Lives Matter, you'd be shutting down abortion clinics in your communities because they kill more black children daily than we do in a year by quote police shootings.
And so now I'm jumping on my social media right now to share a little bit about where we talked a little bit about Ozzie Smith.
Right.
You're a big baseball fan, right? Love your Cardinals, right? And then we talked now. The topics could go on for hours. I know you only have a little bit of time with us here today, but I like this topic because it does sports. I mean, in sports in general. What do you feel about the Cardinals with regard to they handled the Black Lives Matter movement differently?
No, they didn't. They fell in line like everybody. The baseball leagues put it out on the mound. Everybody got extorted, is what it comes down to. If you don't put it out there, if you don't put it on the court, if you don't put it on the mound, if you don't put it at the end zones or something, then you've got to be against Black lives. No, we're not. I mean, I have relatives, through my previous wife who were black. I don't have an issue with that. And
I got a family member. I have family members that are.
Well, see, that's the thing about it. I mean, they want to put you in that box. And word is coming out right now. I haven't had a chance to get into it today because of the hearings. That Joe Biden's great grandfather, somewhere along the line, was a slave owner back about the time Washington was, and he didn't release his slaves as Washington did. He passed them on as legacy to relatives. Well, that was a thing at the time. I'm not criticizing what he did. But I wouldn't blame Joe Biden for what happened then. He had nothing to do with it. But here's Biden and the left pushing reparations and things of that. I didn't have anything to do with slavery. My parents didn't. My grandparents didn't. Somewhere along the line, somebody did. But, you can't punish. Are you going to go out to some young girl from Japan, some child, and start accusing her of killing Americans? Of course not. We should try to move past and make amends.
Well, and it becomes a big issue for our culture. I mean, it's a matter of.
It's a cancel culture. If they don't like you, they're going to cancel you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And freedom of speech is one of the key elements that we all talk about. We got in here with Peggy. We talked about number one, freedom of speech. Well, what's the second one? Right to protect yourself, and get into that too. We'll maybe save that one but literally, my biggest issue, because I've played with these guys. They're some of my closest friends. They're incredible people. And somehow, because of whatever background, supposedly from whatever history, now we can't be friends or whatever. And it ultimately it comes down. Tell me if you agree with this perspective. And that ultimately it's some very nefarious people at the very top who are taking advantage of a group of people.
They're manipulating.
To pit them against other people. Because when you create divisiveness, right?
Then
united we stand, divided we fall, and that causes strife and generates a lot of money.
I've got a sister. I love her dearly. She absolutely hates Trump. She thinks I'm wrong. She's got a son or grandson who is, he's not mentally challenged. I forgot exactly what the term might be. But she is upset with me, swearing, well, I'm not going to lose the love and relationship with my sister over politics and any one man. I'm not going to do it. I got some very good friends. One guy in particular, he and I have always been great buddies. He's married a woman who's much more liberal than he is, but that's fine. We always go. But now I know I'm not seeing them as much, and I think it's because his wife doesn't want to, and that's fine. That's an important relationship to him. But I'm not going to lose friendships, relatives, simply because of our political differences. That's not what you want to do. And I can have a conversation with them, but they can't because they just go ballistic. They can't think rationally.
Well, that's right. At what point do you bring in the conversation and say, guys, you don't understand. You are being taken advantage of. No one, if they imagine, I can't imagine anybody says, Carter, you're being taken advantage of. Oh, no big deal. I don't care. That's when you finally hit somebody and they go, what do you mean? And they either listen to you, which a lot of times they won't, because my mom talks to me about the schooling and the different educational methods that are used out there. And I've talked to other consultants that talk to me about it. Effectively, education at a certain level incorporates some brainwashing, some people say.
Well, let me give you an example. There's a guy, I can't think of his name right now. He wrote a column recently with Judge Barrett now for the nomination. When word came out, this is a mother of 7, a Catholic woman at Notre Dame and raised her kids, and she got her husband who's also, deeply involved. She is everything. It's pretty hard to imagine that anyone could say, well, women or this woman was being held down. She did what she wanted to, when she wanted to. And then they adopted 2 children from Haiti, one at one point, one another. Took those kids out of what Trump would say, either the hellhole or S-hole that existed at that time in Haiti. And everyone in Haiti would agree with that. Yeah, I want out of here. You know how many want to leave the African continent and come here if they can? Sure, I understand that. But they did this. And this leftist progressive writer is accusing her that she and her husband, they're trying to assuage their guilt over being white by bringing in black children, and they're going to colonize them. They're going to basically domesticate them. In other words, maybe use them as, you didn't stop short of saying they're going to use them as slaves, but basically they're trying to change these children. They are changing these children by giving them a life and people who love them and and giving them something many kids won't have.
And then ultimately, are they using our
No.
movies,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
our music, and our sports, and our education system
Right.
as a method? And they talk about this. It's in the book Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky, where they
You're
talk
right.
about the way you take over. And it's not, I try to explain to people like this. We're getting kind of deep here, but I
No,
talk
that's
about,
all right.
I talk
mean,
about
that's
how
I know. I got an appointment here. I have to wait because I'm not going to walk away from you on this. Go ahead.
and it is historically throughout the history of humanity, there's been monarchs, kings, rulers, and peasants, and that was it. Up until about the late 1600s, a guy by the name of Adam Smith came up with this new theory about capitalism, wealth of nations, right? And it said, if you let the people do what they can do to produce for themselves, they can produce incredible amount for everyone. And that's what's happened now. But you still have people who don't understand the upgraded mentality that say, I'm going to be the ruler, I want to be the king. What's the easy way to get power these days? It's to take money that other people have generated and promise to give it to others, and then they will vote for you for that. And they don't realize it causes the whole system for everyone
Margaret
to
Thatcher
crash,
said,
right?
You're right. Margaret Thatcher said socialism is all fine and good until you run out of other people's money. Right? I saw a lady, a beautiful blonde, driving a, I don't know how old she was, beautiful BMW. I mean, one of the newer models and everything. Well, that's nice looking woman, really nice car too. And she drove past and I saw a Biden sticker on the back. I said, does she not understand that if they got in charge, she would have to share her car with everybody else, or she'd have to sell it, and then she would have to take a taxi cab and they use the money to give everyone else. They don't understand that. They don't understand that, and
again, it sounds
and
like
they will do it.
Yeah, we're getting into.
I mean, that's what they're going to do. I mean, you can't deny. I've been really bad over my lifetime of not reading the Bible as effectively as I have. But God has blessed me with these extra years. I've actually tried to go back in and ask for forgiveness and understanding. But I've got a Concordia Seminary Bible that was given me by the Lutheran Synod, Missouri Lutheran Synod, years ago when I was doing stuff for them. And I didn't open it for many years. I'm going through it now, and it's a great study guide. And in there, lately I've been dealing with Jeremiah. Jeremiah, they consider a prophet of doom. It's the longest book in the Old Testament. And how many times he basically was trying to help save the people while God already saved them from Egypt, brought them out of the captivity. Now he's going to let the Babylonians take over because they've turned their back on him. They're making idols, they're praising idols. And God has said, you offended me, turned away from me, and I'm going to put, and he tells Jeremiah, and this is a frightening thing, he said, don't pray for them. Don't ask me anything of them. I'm done with them. I mean, I would hate to have God say, no one could ask anything for you now. I mean, so I think that book is just driving home to me that if we continue to turn our back on God and this nation, and I don't care what you want to call them, I don't care. I've got good friends who are Jewish. I've got friends that, so I do have some Muslim friends. I don't think I have any Buddhist friends, and I don't care. But if you don't have a value system that basically comes from these religions, and the Muslim religion itself is not the Islamist stuff that's being pushed around right now and pushing jihad. But you got people that are using anything they can, Carter.
Well, doesn't it make sense when I think it's what you're saying is, historically, humans are always looking for some way to be in control and be in power. Alexander the Great,
Absolutely.
Genghis Khan. Go down the list of evil dictators, and they all tried the same methods, and it was to coerce somebody with just coercion, right? And
or you fake them out, and they come along like sheep, and they think that they're doing the right, and you're leading them to the better pasture.
And so ultimately,
what do you want to sacrifice for it, though?
It doesn't. Well, it collapses because you cannot produce anything. At the discussion I had with a gal, New Year's Eve, we're late night, and I said, "Oh, like party fun, people doing our thing after midnight." And I said, "Oh," she goes, "Oh, socialism is the way to go. That's the way we're going to be happy." How's that work? I said, "She goes, everybody's going to be paid equal. Everybody gets paid the same." I said, what about the guy who wants to work a little harder and wants to improve his life? Well, he won't be allowed to do that. And I said, good luck change. Now you're trying to reprogram humanity and with the way we are designed by nature. And the other thing I think that this is also ultimately going to allow for this to continue, because it's like free handouts, right? They're hard to take away once you put them out there. That's right. But it's also true of freedom. That was my dad's quote. This quote is one I came up with. Freedom, like free handouts, is hard to take away once you've given it to people. And so I think there's still too many people out there, the silent majority, who are going out there. I took an impromptu poll, and I just said, if the election was today, would you vote for Biden or would you vote for Trump? And his picture actually kind of looked like it might have even favored Biden a little bit. That's what many of the surveys show, but you're right. A lot of people aren't saying And it was him talking like this, and Trump was kind of just sitting back.
Right.
I just put it out there. I had 2 people say they were voting for Biden. Everyone else, minus 3 or 4, said, I don't know, or neither one. All the rest were voting for Trump. And so to that tells me that these polls are off the charts.
Well, they are.
A liberal press gone
last
so far.
time they oversampled Democrats and undersampled Republicans, so they had that number wrong to begin with.
Did they do that on purpose?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, who knows?
Why would you do
They're
that?
supposed to be doing one. I think Gallup last time said we're not even going to project anymore. We're done projecting because it's so messed up. But some of them still do. Like I said, now some of the surveys continue to insist these states are tight. This is going to tight. Swing states, and the Democrats now are talking about the value of that electoral blue college wall, the one that they thought Trump couldn't break previously, which he did. And they said, all right, now let's get rid of the electoral college and go by the popular vote. Well, if they win this time, and it's based on the electoral college, because that's where you would get in, then they would suddenly say, hey, it's a good thing. I had somebody send me a note the other day. I put on the air that he said, you drive around the rural area. He said, Biden comes in third if you look at the signs out in the country. He said, Biden is third. Biden is third. Trump is second. First number 1 sign is firewood for sale.
Well, that helps us all keep it in perspective, I guess, doesn't matter what the priority is.
Well, I appreciate the invite. I truly do.
And literally, I mean, we could talk for hours on this. You're welcome at any time. I'd love to have you come back.
Or they can catch me on my show, too.
And
I talk a lot on that one, too.
And I've called in. I think Paul Brown had been a host for you on.
He did, yeah.
Point.
Paul's done a great job.
And I called in at that time, too. Paul's been on our set right here, sat in the same chair you're sitting in. And literally, I mean, to me, it's, again, ladies and gentlemen, it's not a Republican, Democrat thing. I just happen to throw my ideals towards the things that I know as a matter, and most people understand that unless there's some crazy reprogramming that's going to happen, but that's not the way it is. The way it stands right now is if you want to be happy on this planet, you need to help people and you need to work hard. And the 2 of those things combined ensure you're going to be happy. And that's what's most important.
I don't disagree with you at all. I think that that's what we're losing, and that and our moral compass.
Yeah. And if you do the opposite of that, your life becomes very difficult, and you're going to have a difficult time being happy ever on this planet. And I don't understand why anyone could fathom continuing with the behavior that you've seen, because that benefits them for the spontaneous moment of gratification they have, for that urge, oh, I just did something powerful.
Well, some of them don't see past that moment.
And it's
others,
amazing.
Others that are pulling the strings, they know where they're taking them. They know how they're using them. And at some point, maybe they'll wake up. It's kind of like when we were all kids, or at least I was a lot more liberal. My dad didn't really know anything. I knew everything.
Well, you know that famous
When I get a little bit older, Dad was pretty smart. And, so.
Well, it takes a little bit, but people are just straight up being used to empower some people that think that if they don't want to bother to work so hard to create a business that's successful to make millions, they don't want to work in an organization to move up the top of that. They just say, if I can just promise free things to people and I won't really create anything. As a matter of fact, I'm going to destruct a lot of things. But if I can just get that power, ultimately that's what I want. And they are not smart enough to realize ultimately that collapses also. And it just blows my mind, and they're pushing it. And I think hopefully this is the last stand for that kind of
and it's also
craziness.
the lies that are being shoveled down the throats and put in everybody's face constantly. I mean, they want to blame Trump for all 200,000 COVID plus deaths. Trump is to blame for each and every one.
Again, as somebody who does not analyze the data.
If you're going to do anything, if you're going to accept that, would you at least consider that 7,000 to 20,000 lives lost in New York State were because the governor ordered nursing homes to keep COVID patients?
They argued that 42%.
Would you at least assume? No, they won't even assume that.
42% of people died that way, Larry.
I know. Well, the numbers show clearly that they
were not died that way. They were
if you were
killed.
75 or younger, you're basically going to survive 94-95% even if you come down COVID, unless you have an underlying cause. And of that 6% that had no underlying cause, those were those 80 plus that they had no other issues. But that happens, But I agree with Trump the other day. You cannot live in fear. And they got upset. I don't want to live in fear. I don't want to live in fear of my children being in a car. I'd never let them out of the house. I don't want to live in fear that something's going to fall from the sky. You can't live like that.
We had Dr. Naputi on this show, and we talked stats. I'm a data guy. It's when my baseball career was ended by a drunk driver, but I knew stats all the time. I go to hit. If I go 3 for 5 today, I'll be hitting 426 or whatever. I would know. But literally. So they don't calculate this, and I have a hard time finding anybody else that talks about this, but I've talked about it. I brought it up to the doctor. They have, and we know the general numbers, but the suicide rate is up at least double.
It has gone up.
The mortality rate with regard to nutrition is going to double or triple. People that are going to overdose are doubling and tripling, and the number of people that are dying from untreated medical stuff that they would have normally had treated,
That's
but
out
because
there.
they couldn't
I've
go
had
in.
Dr. Rick Lehman go over that.
And so you're
then your mom is, I'm sure, talking about the lack of education and social relationship for children.
Oh, she's got to teach.
How important that is.
She's got to teach drama over Zoom, and finally they've come around.
We have people that and yes, be cautious. Some people need more caution than others, but at some point, you got to live your life. You can't just live. And the other thing it did say, if you feel like you just feel neglected and alone, think of all your older friends and relatives who are living by themselves, who don't have anyone checking on them. Maybe now you have a little bit more understanding of what they're going through.
You got it. And it's literally, I say, look, let's just look at what is the best overall for the least amount of deaths. And people focus on, and now they've gotten to where the deaths are not as big a shocking number. So they say cases. And I go, do you know the odds of dying from this disease if you're under the age of 70 are like 0.0023 or something?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Not 20%.
No.
We're
and
talking
that's CDC numbers.
And they still use it as a scare tactic, and it's destroying our country, and it's hopefully
our economy. We got to get our economy back up. I was at a restaurant last night in the Valley, and they have lost so much business because they were under 25%. Of course, they had to be closed for a while. Then 25%. You can't operate a restaurant 25%. You don't know if you can get your people in. Now they're expanded 50. Still not doing it. They're outside Chesterfield Valley. There are all those baseball fields. My grandsons would be playing out there on those fields all this summer, and all these parents taking their kids there. They stop at all these food places and get something to eat on the way out or back, and then take a break, go eat, and then go back to the game. Those businesses, they need that money. They're not getting it.
Well, I brought a mask here just in case.
Yeah, what's this?
And this is the new style. And so now you can go around. I think I got an extra one here. This is how we're going to have to communicate.
Well, you look pretty like that.
I mean, it does blur. So this way you don't have to look at me as much, right? But
of course, I know it can come up under here.
Well, and that's why I said this is a facade again, because if it's airborne.
Yeah, it's going to get around it. The same thing with the shields at the grocery store. Do they not realize, as I said earlier, if I dump some feathers out there, some will find their way on the other side of that barrier?
Absolutely. And so a lot of people, well, it blocks some. And I go, and it also harvests everything you're seeing, especially the cloth ones. They literally, so you touch your face because it's itching now, but how often do people touch their face? Well, Cowboys researched it 16 to 23 times an hour. So now it's without having to be the cloth on your face that's already driving you nuts. So now you touch your face, and then you go, oh, here's my mic, here's my phone. This is amazing. This is happening in 2 different locations. If you're going to be in our store, you have to wear a mask. I put a mask on. And then the guy goes, we're doing something with the phone. He goes, let me see your phone. I was returning some TVs. I'm going, you just, every bit of my flora and bacteria.
I play poker.
It's just
and they have the poker players. We have to sit with masks on now. And then they have a shield. But we're still handling the chips and the cards. I mean, at some point, you just get. We need to go around in scuba outfits for the rest of our lives,
and then
gloves.
Potentially, we could stop any transfer of any disease, and then our immune systems would be so weak we will die with a common cold. Nobody thinks about this. They think about what they're trying to do.
As they did in the day of the world.
The odds of me spitting into your eye while we're talking, I've counted the times that's happened to me because I've been talking to somebody. I'm like, whoa. It's happened twice in my life. It was an accident. What you call it, the gleek, right? And it's a complete accident. But I'm saying, so this is what we're wearing masks for, and so that they don't cover your eyes. They cover your mouth and your nose. You're much more susceptible.
Well, that's why the shield, they say,
the shield's
because
better
it can't get through the membrane of the eye. But if you don't have your face fully enclosed, it will still find a way in.
Yes, it's like, by now you're touching. You touch a doorknob, the handrail. The electric buttons on the elevator.
Here's how I'm worried about it. Let me see your hand. Here's how I'm worried about it. Thanks for having me on the program.
Absolutely.
I've contaminated you.
Yeah, well, now you have just helped me because I know you have some good bacteria and some good flora that's going to help me build my immune system.
I drink a lot of Jack. I'm in good shape.
And maybe that'll give me a little bit to flow on, too. Ladies and gentlemen, we could talk for hours. Thanks again to Larry Connors, the legend, in studio tonight on the Cardinal Cowboy Show. Ladies and gentlemen, come back, tune in some more excitement. I'll be calling into Larry again sometime, and we'll have a little more of our discussion. Thanks, everybody. You've been listening to the Cardinal Cowboy Show. Giddy up.